Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
The following podcast is a deep, shallow dive production.
And you're going to love it.
Okay, let's go.
Every conversation about how the Trump administration is doing has to begin with the fact that there was no alternative.
I don't know if you voted for him many other times. This was my first time. And I got to say, even though I don't think my expectations were extremely lofty, as of now, I feel relatively disappointed with the outcome. I'm curious what your grades are for him. I know that you were kind of more in alignment with him because of probably RFK Jr. and maybe Tulsi or something like that. What are your thoughts?
I am confused by what I see.
Me too.
I am completely comfortable with having voted for Trump. It was my first time because of the apocalypse that was represented by the blue ticket.
True.
And so I just don't think there was any rational choice. We had an absolute emergency on our hands, and this simple ability to vote for something that was in some way authentic made it the only game in town.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Hey, sorry for getting this out a little bit late, but anyway, okay. Hope you guys had a great weekend, all that jazz. What did I want to talk about? All right, we're going to talk about a bunch of things today and just kind of see the direction that this takes. This is a guy named Brett Weinstein. I think I've played him before on the podcast, potentially. He has a brother named Eric Weinstein. I actually really like both of these guys. They're pretty good. I like Brett more than I like Eric, and I'm trying to get him on the podcast, so we'll see if we can make that happen. But, I wanted to start out with this clip because I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and it's really, what's going on with the Trump administration. We're gonna go into Charlie Kirk a little bit more today as well, because if you did not see, it's interesting. It's like I've got like two sets of friends right now, or two groups. I've got ones that are like ultra obsessed over everything. And so like whenever an episode comes out or really anything, we're chatting on text, DM on Instagram, DM on Facebook. I've got one friend, I'm not going to mention her name. She is hilarious. Like within an hour, I'll get like a text message from her, a DM on Instagram, and then a DM on Facebook, and then a DM on TikTok. I'll be like, oh my God, we're like communicating across every possible platform. So I've got that group of friends, and then I've got another group that just is not into anything. And so, hey, you know what? Hopefully listening to this episode will meet both of those needs, because it'll go a little bit deeper for the folks that are paying attention, and then at least give the folks that are not paying attention a good top line of what's going on. But I wanted to play Brett's clip in terms of the Trump administration, and there's a little bit more because, here we are, maybe 8 months in, and, I gotta be honest, a good chunk of America, myself included, is just like, what is going on? What did we end up getting? It's kind of like voting for one thing and then completely getting something else. And man, there is a growing voice on social media that is echoing that same sentiment. And, that was a little bit on display at the Charlie Kirk, SummerSlam funeral event, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But let's listen to a little bit of the rest of this from Brett, because I think he does a really nice job of, kind of encapsulating what many people are feeling and what he talked about in the beginning of that segment. He was right. It was like, what a mess from the Democrat side, not only the past 4 years from 2020 to 2024, but just the way all of that went down with, Biden, stepping down at the last minute, them not even having a real primary, trying to slide Kamala into that, the debate, all of that stuff was just a mess. And even with all that, I forget what the voting was, but it definitely was closer than I thought. But, let's take the jump off point from what he said as, I really didn't feel like I had another choice. I just wanted to kind of go in another direction and vote for what at the time I considered the lesser of two evils. Okay, now let's listen to the rest.
Now, as for what is transpiring under the Trump administration, I am aware that there is a labyrinth of power and a hidden priority list. The administration presumably has things it wants to accomplish. The labyrinth of power sets the ground rules as to what can be accomplished at what rate and in exchange for what. I know I'm not privy to that. And so the real question is, how does this stack up compared to what was possible given the cards that President Trump held on inauguration? And I don't think any of us are in a position to answer that. So, is the disappointment the result of the fact that the constraints on the president are greater than we hoped and maybe imagined? Are they the result of the priorities not being the represented priorities? Undoubtedly, that plays some role. But, again, in light of what was, we had President Biden was not the president in the meaningful sense of that term. We finally
beat Medicare.
For them to have attempted to run him again, and then at the point that became implausible, to swap in an empty shirt is such a dire commentary on the state of the republic that I think every conversation about how the Trump administration is doing has to begin with the fact that there was no alternative.
All right, I think that was incredibly well said. And, the most interesting part is it sounds like that was Brett. I don't know who he was talking to, but, a couple guys that, were not team Trump guys or like always Trump guys or Trump worship syndrome guys. But again, there was no alternative. So now here we are. And it's like, what is going on? All right, let me shoot some real talk at you and just tell you what I see happening. And it was on full display on Sunday at Charlie Kirk's. Again, I call it like his SummerSlam memorial service, which was insane. I mean, it was insane. Now let's start with the good. It was a nice gathering of people that obviously were there to pay their respects to Charlie. And again, I completely respect that 100%. From everything that I saw, videos and all of that, obviously it was peaceful. There wasn't any looting. There wasn't any craziness and all that. So the Republican / conservative / Christian base of America is basically, saying, hey, look, this is how we do it. This is how we celebrate / grieve. We're not setting cars on fire. We're not looting cities. We're not looting small businesses. And again, that is creating the division between the left versus right. They're obviously referring to, things like the Black Lives Matters movement and all the things that took place when George Floyd got killed back in 2020. Man, that is insane that was so long ago. I think that was 2020. Yeah, that was 20. Was that 2020? Yeah, that was 2020. Hold on, let me look. Yeah, he died on May 25th, 2020. That's insane. Doesn't that feel like yesterday? It really feels like yesterday. But obviously what took place there, you had a bunch of videos on, especially Instagram, of, the top of the screen was kind of the peace, love, kumbaya of Charlie Kirk's situation, or again, SummerSlam memorial event, versus the bottom was what was taking place after the George Floyd stuff. Now, again, yes, they both were killed, but obviously two different situations. But regardless, this goes into what I'm seeing taking place. And I've talked about it a little bit before, but more than anything right now, I honestly see an unbelievable division that is being attempted to be split even wider open than it already is. And let me tell you what that division is. in the United States, it's the civil war between the left versus the right. Same thing as always, liberals versus conservatives and all that. But now you've got an added layer of this Christian nationalism. I really see an attempt to try and make America super Christian. I don't know if I should say again. I mean, I think it was at some point, but obviously because of all the diversity in this country, I don't know if I'd say we're a Christian nation anymore. And it's funny, in my episode with Pastor Matt First, he said, that was a while back ago, he said, we used to be a Christian nation. Now we're a Christian Zionist nation. And I don't know, man. I don't know which direction it's going, Christian nationalist versus Christian Zionist. And really the difference is Christian nationalist is going to be people that, maybe are just all about Christianity and America first, truly. Christian Zionists is going to be people that are all about Christianity, but they also attach Judaism to it. So it's that Judeo-Christian mentality, and it's really the United States and Israel being sort of, joined at the hip. And, that's what everybody is saying we are at this point, a Christian Zionist nation. We're not a Christian nationalist nation. Now, the question becomes, are they trying to take us into Christian nationalism? And if so, this is kind of interesting. I mean, if so, is that meaning they want to detach from the Judeo-Christian side? Now, again, when I say they, I'm talking about the current, Republican conservative base in the United States, whom, by the way, is completely attached to the Judeo side. So, if there ever was 4D chess, this would be it as a way to, I guess, rally America to just Christianity and really separating the Judeo side. I don't know, man. That is a unbelievably big undertaking, but it's also I don't know, it's wild to think about that. Because that would mean, if that was the case, that would mean Trump and the Trump administration and everybody is really playing 4D chess right now. And they're trying to get out from under the thumb of, let's say, Israel and the Netanyahu administration to an extent. I don't know, man. Listen, you've got to consider all options with things. And I'll tell you what made me think about that option, which, by the way, I think not many people would even remotely agree with that. And maybe not many people would even be able to see that option. But what made me think about it is Tucker Carlson, whom was invited to speak at Charlie Kirk's memorial. And let's listen to what he said.
God is here, and you can feel it. And Charlie would have loved this, not just because he loved large groups of people, but because ultimately he was a Christian evangelist. And it actually reminds me of my favorite story ever. So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people, and they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking. We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do about this guy telling the truth about us? We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I can just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him? That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
Man, his laugh is so goofy. Okay, let me break that down for you guys. And before I do that, again, I am very surprised, and this lends, I guess, a little bit of credence to what I, talked about before I played Tucker's clip in, is there a 4D chess move going on in the background? Man, if there is, I will be blown away. But my point is, I'm surprised they even let Tucker speak, okay? And that is because, again, remember, part of what is going on right now and a considerable discussion that is happening online is, obviously who killed Charlie Kirk. And, people are not believing the official narrative. And we'll get into that in a second. But Tucker, obviously Candace Owens, we've talked about her, Megyn Kelly, the comedian Dave Smith. These are people that, again, have really come out against the state of Israel. Remember, let's make everything about the state of Israel and really about the Netanyahu administration more than anything. This doesn't have anything to necessarily do with the people of Israel. And I really don't even think it has to do with Judaism as a religion. You know what I mean? This is more about the state of Israel and the political affiliation and influence that it could have over the United States. So the fact that Tucker was even allowed to speak at this thing, I'm very surprised. And so if you did not, I guess, gather the intent of what he said, basically, he was saying his favorite story is from some 2,000 years ago, and that's the story of Jesus Christ. And so if you don't know that, man, I am well versed in Christianity these days. Obviously, if you ask any, probably like 90% of Christians who killed Jesus Christ, they're going to say the Jews killed Jesus Christ. That's what they're going to say. I mean, you can even Google that, ChatGPT it. That is the resounding answer most Christians give, okay? Now, what's interesting about that is, and I've had this discussion obviously with so many people, and then even friends of mine, technically, the Jews, in my opinion at least, technically, they did not kill him because they told the Romans to kill him. And so it was Romans who, I guess, put the sword in him to deliver the kill shot, So again, I mean, from an outsider's perspective, technically it was the Romans. But then they say that it was the Pharisees, I guess that's what they're called. Like, I think those were like the Jewish power base at that time who put pressure on Pontius Pilate to kill him. And then Pontius Pilate enabled or basically instructed the Romans to do it. And it was all because they were protecting Tiberius Caesar or Caesar. Again, I mean, so much semantics in that. But like I said, if you have any real Christian Catholic friends, or if you are yourself, I'd be curious, who do you think killed Jesus Christ? But fundamentally, that narrative of the Jews killing Jesus Christ is really out there in a major way. And that's kind of what Tucker was saying. He said, hey, my favorite story is the story of Jesus Christ, who was talking and saying all these things. And so one guy came up with the idea of, let's shut him up by killing him. I want to talk about the hummus reference as well. But you know what? Let's listen to this again, because I do want to interject a few things.
So it's about 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem, and Jesus shows up and he starts talking about the people in power, and he starts doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people.
Okay, so immediately, doing the worst thing that you can do, which is telling the truth about people. And a lot of people are saying that's what Charlie was starting to do.
And they hate it, and they just go bonkers. They hate it, and they become obsessed with making him stop. This guy's got to stop talking.
Okay, they become obsessed. He's got to stop. This guy's got to stop talking. There's a lot of stuff out there about how Charlie Kirk was in the Hamptons in July, and there was a big meeting called by a very prominent either hedge fund, I think it's a hedge fund guy, Bill Ackman, who's a very big Jewish billionaire Zionist guy that's really close with Netanyahu. And they put the screws to Charlie at that at that meeting in the Hamptons. Now, that's getting vetted by a variety of people, but there also is the rumor allegedly that Netanyahu offered Charlie $150 million cash infusion into his Turning Point USA, and that Charlie turned him down. So again, listen to everything that Tucker's saying. This dude is calculated. Again, whether you like him or not, he is highly calculated with the things he says and the analogies he brings out. And so both of those so far make reference to kind of what had taken place with Charlie in the very recent months.
We've got to shut this guy up. And I can just sort of picture the scene in a lamplit room with a bunch of guys sitting around eating hummus, thinking about what do we do?
Okay, so there was an intent to the eating hummus thing. At first I thought like, okay, isn't hummus more of a Middle Eastern thing than necessarily, let's say, an Israeli Jewish thing? So anyway, I asked ChatGPT, it gave me a bunch of stuff, but it netted out as putting it together. I lean toward this being a coded insinuation, not just colorful storytelling. Carlson probably wanted to evoke modern identity, Israel and Jews, without naming them, while giving his audience enough to fill in the blank. The goal: stir suspicion and assign blame indirectly. Okay, I mean, I think his whole speech was that, but the hummus part in particular.
About this guy telling the truth about us. We must make him stop talking. And there's always one guy with the bright idea, and I could just hear him say, I've got an idea, why don't we just kill him?
I mean, again, remember, he's talking about Jesus Christ, but obviously the parallels and the insinuation, I mean, it was so obvious to me. Now, I'd be curious if it was obvious to you. You know, when you're hearing this, gosh, maybe with my explanation, it might be obvious now. But ironically, when I played it the first time, what did you think? And then what do you think now that we've gone through it a second time and I've explained it? Do you think that's what his insinuation was, or are you interpreting it differently? Let me know. I'd actually be interested.
That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem.
That'll shut him up. That'll fix the problem. And then that goofy laugh. Okay, so I don't know, man. You guys tell me. You guys tell me what you think the interpretation of that was. Now, here's the thing. The spin that is now coming out of it, and this is pretty wild. Remember back last year when I talk about marketing slogans that I noticed in politics? For example, referring to Tim Walz as the happy warrior. Remember that? He's a happy warrior, happy warrior, happy warrior. He's a happy warrior. Tim Walz is the happy warrior. Look, everybody, Tim Walz is the happy warrior. Or when Kamala kind of took over, she's going to bring joy back. Joy, joy. There's going to be joy. She's bringing joy back to the country. You know, joy was a big one. Happy warrior was a big one. Putin's brutal invasion. Putin's brutal invasion. Putin's brutal invasion. That was a big one. I mean, that was a big one. What else? You know, even flatten the curve and all those things. Gosh, flatten the curve is literally the three words that kind of woke me up in 2020. Isn't that funny? Those three words. I was so surprised to hear that phrase being repeated on every news station and everything. It just felt very coordinated, okay? And so now what's happening on the Republican side now we're talking about conservative / Republican. And again, I'm going to group the Christian base here. Now, I'm not sure if the intent is to move toward Christian nationalism. Let's define it like this. Christian nationalism is just Christians. Christian Zionism is Christians plus Judaism. So let's say Christian nationalism is just the United States. Christian Zionism is the United States plus Israel. I don't know, man. I don't know, but I am seeing marketing slogans. This is the turning point. Pay attention to that. I bet you'll see that everywhere on the conservative side. This is the turning point, or this is our turning point. That's kind of one of the big ones. You're hearing a lot about, you know, Charlie Kirk being a martyr. He's a martyr. He's a martyr. That's a little odd to me too. I mean, again, I think obviously he There's a lot of good and a lot of bad on Charlie Kirk. There just was. And that's the truth. And again, regardless, I'm going to say it again because I really feel this like with every ounce of my soul. He deserved to lose debates. He did not remotely deserve to lose his life, nor does anyone for giving their opinions on things. Okay, all right, let me see if there's anything else. Man, all of a sudden we're at 25 minutes. Let me see if there's anything else. Actually, you know what? There are a few other things I want to play for you. Okay, so listen to this lady. This was on TikTok. And again, when I look at things to play for you guys, I basically like look for trends and then I try to find the best clip encapsulating the trend. So this is the trend. This is wild. This is coming from conservatives. There's a ton of these clips, and this lady did the best job of summing it up.
This is probably going to lose a lot of you, so please, please just listen to me, okay? I am a card-carrying conservative, but something is up with the wife, okay? Something is up with the fact that she had never done a pageant before and just so happened to get a modeling offer in the mail, and then she just so happened to win Miss Arizona USA 2012. There's something up with the fact that she was 17 and started a nonprofit where she worked alongside the United States military in Romania, doing work with orphanages at the same period that Romania was having one of its largest trafficking crises in its history. There's also something up with the fact that she is a licensed real estate agent in the state of New York, and she worked for the same real estate group that did business with Jeffrey Epstein. And she was very, very successful on her own before the mutual friend set her up for her interview with Charlie for Turning Point. And sources are saying that that friend was President Trump. You guys, she was already successful. She had this vision. And now there are rumors that allegedly Netanyahu was going to free up $150 million of American Jewish money to Turning Point USA. And Charlie declined it. And you guys, just since Charlie's death, Turning Point USA has gotten over 18,000 chapter requests across the United States. I did not hear one mention of Israel or Netanyahu or the backlash that Charlie had been facing in Erica's speech. And today, when the Charlie Kirk show was live, none of his friends or co-workers said one thing about it while they were all talking about the alleged shooter in Utah. And you guys, that's something that they should at least clear up or acknowledge, but they're not talking about it. And all rabbit holes lead to the same place. So please think critically about this. And God bless.
All right, that was a good recap moving into Erica Kirk, the wife. And, for now, I'm just going to say, I don't know, man. I get weird vibes from her. I really do. It's just everything is super sus for me with her. I just get weird vibes, and it goes to, her whole backstory, which obviously I didn't even know much about that. My weird vibes just come from, her posting a video of her and the casket. I think I talked about this last week. The video that went crazy viral where people were like, it doesn't even look like real hands. They look like rubber hands. She showed Charlie's hands. That was weird. Just doing that process is weird because, again, when you see these crazy clips on social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever, or TikTok, if it's something crazy, think about what it took to film that. It's like, hey, okay, turn the camera on. Do me a favor. Film me grieving over my dead husband's casket. Like, it's just weird. It's just weird. Honestly, I'll share something incredibly personal. When our dad passed away and on the day of his funeral, obviously we went to the mortuary to kind of, I guess, see him one final time before they closed the coffin. And then we took the coffin to the cemetery. And again, I remember him inside the coffin, and we put, a bunch of things in there with him and, memorabilia and keepsakes and just really personal things. And I remember thinking to myself, should I take a picture of this or not? And I didn't. I didn't take a picture of him in that coffin because I just didn't want that. I mean, I guess I have the memory of it burned in my brain, but I didn't want the photo of it. I just didn't. I thought to myself, you know what? That's just, I don't know. There's something off about that. There was something off about that for me. I just felt very strange taking a photo of him. And so I did not do that. You know, obviously I have the memory of him, but you know what's interesting? Even the memory of that image of him, I mean, I can kind of picture it, but I can't say I can picture it clear as day anymore. What I picture clear as day is more, you know, the various photos I have of him around my house or on my screen on my phone or my laptop or whatever. And that's kind of how I want to remember him. You know, I'd rather remember, you know, the photo of me, him, and my brother with our arms around each other versus necessarily remembering the image of him in that coffin. So I'm actually really glad I didn't take that. Now, again, you know, obviously Erica Kirk did not show him in the coffin. But my point is, think about what it took to film that video of her standing over him, saying the things she did. I don't know. It's just weird to me. It's very strange. And then to post that personal of a video on social media, I thought was odd. Honestly, what I would have done in that situation is I think it's totally appropriate to have posted a picture of the closed coffin and just a picture. And you can even have yourself standing by it. I think that would have been appropriate. But an open casket, I keep saying coffin. Maybe I meant to say casket. The open casket, and then you showing his hands and then kind of narrating over top of that, I found that strange. And then there were a lot of strange things at, you know, again, the SummerSlam memorial event. There were fireworks. It was just goofy, man. It was goofy. And then the other thing is, you know, they didn't let his parents talk. I would have liked to have heard from his parents. He has a sister. I would have liked to have heard from her. Now, maybe they didn't want to talk. Again, I don't know. But the list of speakers that spoke, it felt more like a rah-rah MAGA Trump administration rally than necessarily a memorial event. I mean, it really did. You know, you had Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who else? Don Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, like people from the administration. Again, the only person I think outside of the administration might have been Tucker Carlson and maybe his pastor or somebody else on the religious side. But I don't know. It came off very inauthentic to me. It just was not what I'd expect. And again, like I said, there's fireworks going on. There's like sparklers being shot off. You know, they turned it into an event necessarily and not necessarily really a memorial service. Now, maybe it wasn't supposed to be a memorial service. I don't know. Obviously, I don't think that was the official funeral. Like, I don't think afterwards a group of people went to the cemetery and they buried him. I'm sure they either had the funeral, maybe they had the funeral on last Saturday, or gosh, when was it? Has it even been? Oh my God, this has been like a crazy 4 or 5 days. Anyway, just a lot of sus vibes on all that. It really was a lot of sus vibes. Okay, let me see if I have anything else. Oh, you know what? I did want to talk about this. Okay, so the current story about the bullet, by the way, everyone's like, well, where's the bullet? Where's the bullet? You know, there's no exit wound, okay? With Charlie, there was no exit wound. If you actually watched the original video, it looked like just something hit him in the middle section of his neck, and then all of a sudden blood started gushing out of that. But all of these hunters and snipers and military guys, I mean, there's a ton of these. A lot of people are saying that was the exit wound, okay? Not the entry wound. Now, again, on that one super grainy, you know, iPhone 1 video, which that's another sus thing. I actually put a video out where it shows directly. There were high resolution cameras pointed right at Charlie and right at his neck, maybe 15, 20 feet away. I'm talking like SLR professional high resolution cameras. Where's that footage? That footage should have captured exactly what happened. And that footage is not released. Instead, the only footage that we've seen is like super grainy iPhone 1 footage. I'm kidding about the iPhone 1. That's like a joke I like to make in terms of the old school iPhones, or something being super, super not polished and high resolution the way these current iPhones, really probably anything post iPhone 7 shoots in like incredibly high resolution. But that stuff is weird to me as well. But now they came out and they said that the bullet, which came from, they call it a 30 AUG 6, and that's from that Hauser rifle. All of these hunters have gone online and said that is a ridiculously powerful piece of ammunition. And had that gone through his neck, it would have blown a hole out of the other side and, practically decapitated him, like literally like shot off half of his neck. Where instead there's no exit wound, and they haven't been able to necessarily locate the bullet until Saturday night. I believe his like producer and best friend, I don't know if it was his best friend actually, but this Andrew Clavot or something like that, this guy came out and said he spoke to the surgeon and that Charlie's bones were so healthy they stopped the bullet. And then they started referring to Charlie in the news releases as the Man of Steel. Let me read this because this is pretty insane. All right, the guy's name is Andrew Colvett. He said, I want to address some of the discussion about the lack of an exit wound with Charlie. I'm not usually interested in delving into most of this kind of online chatter, and I apologize this is somewhat graphic, but in this case, the fact that there wasn't an exit wound is probably another miracle, and I want people to know. I just spoke with the surgeon who worked on Charlie in the hospital. He said the bullet, quote, absolutely should have gone through, which is very, very normal for a high-powered, high-velocity round. I've seen wounds from this caliber many times, and they always just go through everything. This would have taken a moose or two down, or an elk, etc. Okay. But it didn't go through. Charlie's body stopped it. I mentioned to his doctor that there were dozens of staff, students, and special guests standing directly behind Charlie on the other side of the tent, and he replied, quote, it was an absolute miracle that someone else didn't get killed, end quote. And then another quote, his bone was so healthy and the density was so impressive that he's like the Man of Steel. It should have just gone through and through. It likely would have killed those standing behind him too, end quote. In the end, the coroner did find the bullet just beneath the skin. Even in death, Charlie managed to save the lives of those around him. Remarkable, miraculous. So that's the official statement from Turning Point USA. I mean, you really need to decide what you think about that and whether that is super sus or not. I am going to go with the super sus on that statement. And based on all the reviews from, skilled hunters and also military people, there is no chance that that bullet could have stayed in his throat. Like, no chance at all. It would have gone through, and then the exit wound on the other side would have been massive to where they're saying it would have literally practically taken out half of his neck. Now, Candace Owens supposedly saw the video that got taken down from the camera that was directly behind him, and all I'll say is she basically said there was no blood seen from the back, and therefore, again, that bullet, if it came from the front, if it came from that sniper, or if it came from Tyler Robinson on that roof, and that was what the shot really was, then it did stay in his neck and stick in his neck. But this is where people are saying that's not possible. So now they obviously are questioning whether it was Tyler Robinson from 200 yards out on a roof with a meat cleaver in the solarium. Oh, I try to remember that game Clue. I try to remember something from that, but I don't think I did a good job. Anyway, all right, that's it. 40 minutes. These are things that you need to kind of think about. And again, I mean, it's more than anything right now for me, I'm trying to figure out what is the intent moving forward, and what is wanting to be done moving forward. And what I'll say is the two major divisions I'm seeing, I'm going to keep repeating this: left versus right, civil war in the United States. They're going to keep hammering that and try to bust that wide open. And then again, kind of like I talked, even on the episode on Friday with Canyon Mims, the Muslim convert young kid, you know, Islam versus Christianity and dividing Muslims and Christians, where fundamentally that's 2.5 billion people and 2.1 billion people globally, and trying to make them hate each other, when in reality, they actually love each other and they have a tremendous amount in common, including both of them considering Jesus Christ the Messiah. Okay, boom. Ray D is religious AF. All right, that's it, everybody. Have a great day. I'll catch up with you later. Interviews, more episodes coming this week. We'll talk to you soon. Call a spade. Call your parents.
This episode was brought to you by Zipix nicotine toothpicks. Zip more, smoke less. Totally satisfying, discreet, and delicious. Zipix nicotine-infused toothpicks are available in 6 great flavors, each containing at least 2 milligrams of nicotine to curb those cravings. Zipix is FDA registered and proudly made in the USA. Use discount code DSD for 10% off your order at zipixtoothpicks.com. Zip more, smoke less, save 10%.